Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to discuss and review how to play on the Hunter, and more specifically, how to play on the brand new Nightstalker subclass called the Way of the Wraith. For those of you that don't know, this is one of the brand new subclasses that just came out in the Forsaken DLC, and the way in which you unlock this bad boy is by gaining and obtaining a Seed of Light. Now, the way in which you get these Seeds of Light is by completing one of two tasks, and the first is by either doing the Last Wish raid, or the second, which is by doing a Tier 3 Blind Well. Knowing that, the main reason as to why we're doing this video is because of you, my friends, and all you Deislayers out there, in particular Loop, Tyler, Toby, Deadpool Miner, and Khalil, all asked for this kind of video. And so for you, my friends, not only are we going to discuss as to exactly how the super is going to work, but we're also going to analyze as to how you can use that thing to get the most kills possible. In addition to this, we're also going to go ahead and take a look at the subclass's overall abilities, how we're going to use them on a regular basis, the subclass's neutral game, how to use the melee, how to use the grenades, and all that kind of jazz. So the only thing left to do, my friends, is to eviscerate that notification button, and let's jump right into the video. The very first thing that I want to discuss and give you guys tips on is how to use the Spectral Blade Super. But before we do so, you have to understand as to exactly what the Spectral Blade Super is. As you can see, Spectral Blade states that this perk summons a pair of deadly void blades to stalk the battlefield in a veil of shadows. Press R1 to perform a quick melee attack, and pressing R2 to perform a heavy attack and once again vanish from sight. Obviously, you can see that I'm on the PlayStation, as that's referring to R1 and R2. But for those of you on the Xbox, then R1 is going to transfer to RB, and R2 is going to transfer to RT, aka right bumper and right trigger respectively. For those of you Guardians on PC, I have no idea as to what kind of shortcuts that you guys are using, so of course it's going to be different for you, but just keep in mind that all the techniques and the combos that I'm about to show you still apply for PC just the same way that they do for console. Understanding that, we're going to jump right into a private match so that you guys can see all these combos, but more importantly, some of the techniques that I use to actually close the gap and cross the most horizontal distance the fastest when you're in your super. As you guys can tell, I've just popped my super and I'm pressing R1 or RB on Xbox as much as I possibly can. This is the most basic and the most simplistic maneuver that you can do, and in actuality, you can actually do this up to 18 times when you're in your super if you start from the beginning to the end. Now, this maneuver is certainly not going to apply to all scenarios, and if you do this all the time, then you're going to get downed almost instantly. And so that's why you gotta know how to do the heavy attack or vanish from sight by pressing R2 on the PS4 and RT on the Xbox. Throughout these first couple of examples, I'm constantly pressing R1 to then press R2, but this is definitely not the only way in which you can use this thing, as you can use this to actually cross the map in a very effective manner, and that's what we're going to see right now. As I pop my super, I then jump into the air to press R1 and then press R2 to actually do the uppercut or the heavy power move, and that, as you guys can tell, is going to allow me to cross the map very quickly. By doing this maneuver in the air, I'm able to cross the most horizontal distance the fastest, while at the same time still going into stealth mode, which is not only going to make you a harder target to hit, but people are not expecting you to attack from the air. And so when you couple these two things together, you're not only crossing the most horizontal distance, but you're also becoming invisible, making this a perfect symbiotic relationship. Taking everything that I've just said, we can now combine them from one maneuver into the next so that you guys can actually make your own types of combos. You can press R1 once, R1 twice, and then go and press R2 to do the uppercut, or you can press R1 3 times to then press R2, or whatever it might be, and then slide, dash, and then go into the next slide, or possibly even go into the air to press R1 and then R2, covering the most horizontal distance and then attacking from the air. No matter what the case may be, what I want you guys to take away from all these in-game examples is that I am constantly, and I truly do mean this, constantly changing it up from one combination into the next. I am never doing the same thing twice, and the reason for this is because you're never going to be in the exact same situation or scenario twice. You might have a guardian to your left, which you then have to attack first, or you might have two guardians directly in front of you, or you might have two guardians behind you, and so no matter the scenario, you're going to have to use your judgment, understand the fundamentals of how the Spectral Blade Super is functioning. Now, I'm not going to lie. As it stands right now, this Spectral Blade Super is probably one of the worst supers in the entire game. And the reason why I say this is because even though it can be very evasive and you can attack from angles that people aren't expecting, the hit registration on the actual melee attack is hideous and horrendous on so many levels that I cannot even describe to you as to how garbage that it actually is. On second thought, I take that back, because the hit registration on this particular super is a definition of muff cabbage trash. That's how bad that this thing actually is, my friends, and I usually don't say that unless something is truly horrendous and just god-awfully terrible. However, I do have some marvelous and absolutely glorious news for all of you Guardians out there, because this particular super is going to get a complete rework and retuned beginning of Season 5. The reason as to why I know this is because in the previous This Week at Bungie, they actually came out with this announcement. And as you can tell, Spectral Blades was heavily retuned to increase the reliability of melee attacks in PvP. And to bolster the effectiveness of super stealth capabilities, the following changes are planned to reach these goals. Not only is the super's reliability going to increase dramatically, but furthermore, it's going to decrease the actual amount of super energy that we're doing with all of our maneuvers, as well as giving us more control as to exactly the directions which we want to go with the super. And finally, Bungie is increasing the viability of the stealth mechanics. With all these changes coming at the beginning of Season 5, I think that this Spectral Blade Super is going to become a powerhouse and truly going to dominate, because as it is right now, this super's hit registration is like the Hulk going up against Thanos, and needless to say, all of you know how that turned out because Hulk got put in timeout. Now that you are armed on how to use this super most effectively, the next thing that we've got to discuss and analyze is this subclass's neutral game. And oh boy, do I gotta say that this neutral game on this subclass is probably one of the best on every single subclass. But be warned that it requires a very passive playstyle, and so for those of you that are more aggressive, this subclass may not be for you. Now, as to how this subclass has some phenomenal neutral game is through one perk and one perk alone, and that's called Flawless Execution. Flawless Execution states that while crouched, precision kills grant invisibility, true sight, and increased melee range. Yes, my friends, you heard me right, as Flawless Execution is going to give you invisibility and, more importantly, true sight. For those of you that don't know what true sight is pretty much the one capability that's going to then allow you to see through walls. And so as soon as you happen to go invis, you're also then going to be able to see through these walls and have these nice little red blips everywhere on your screen dictating as to where guardians are behind those walls. I don't think that you actually realize as to how powerful that this one ability is, as you can proc it on almost every single kill as long as you're crouching. And when you do so, you then have the capability to anticipate where guardians are going to be before they can even see you, and that's because every single time that you go invisible, you're then taken off a radar. Without you being shown on a radar, guardians are going to have absolutely no idea as to where you're coming from. And so you can use this in a wide variety of ways, not just to anticipate where guardians are going to be, but also to anticipate where they're looking, as you can dodge left, lose line of sight, and then appear from the right, attacking them and demolishing them before they even know what hit them. Furthermore, what I think is the icing on the cake here is that you can actually proc Flawless Execution from one crouch kill into the next, and so you can actually keep proccing the 10-second timer on this overall ability over and over again every single time. In theory, you can actually stay invisible throughout the entire match. Now, although this isn't really going to happen in a real game scenario, what is going to happen is the way in which you proc this invisibility. And so that's why I would highly recommend that you guys are using precision weapons. As you guys have seen throughout this entire game footage so far, the only two weapons that I've really been focusing on is using number 1, the Chaperone, or number 2, the Not Forgotten. If you guys don't happen to have the Not Forgotten, then by all means, use the Luna or the Trust Hand Cannon or something else along those lines, because whatever kind of weapon that's going to have a high damage output in a short amount of time is exactly what you want to use. because those weapons are then going to imply that you have a very high chance of then hitting more critical headshots to then get that while you're crouched and of course go invisible. Having said that, that does not mean that you guys have got to use only those types of weapons, because as you can also tell, I've been using some auto rifles, in particular the horror story, and so even with that, I was still able to get a fair amount of critical headshots, thus going invisible while I was crouched. In the end, it really just comes down to you and your personal preference and playstyle. But what I would recommend is using those high damage output weapons like hand cannons, slug shotguns, and high impact pulse rifles, as those are probably going to be the ones that give you the flawless execution the most frequently. Taking one step back, the very next thing that I want to discuss, or rather I should say recommend, is what exotics that you guys should use on this particular new subclass with the Spectral Blades. If I was you, I would either use number 1, the Graviton Forfeit, or number 2, the brand new exotic Forsaken chest piece, and at the moment it's currently eluding me as to what the actual name is, but it's not the 6 Coyote and it's the other one. The main reason as to why I suggest using the Graviton Forfeit is because that particular exotic helmet has one very unique perk that is going to benefit this subclass beautifully, and it's called Vanishing Shadow. Vanishing Shadow is not only going to increase the duration of your invisibility effects, but it's also going to recharge your melee even faster while you are invisible. The latter half of that ability is really going to come into play, and I'll explain that in just a couple of minutes. But what I really want you to focus on here is the increase in the duration of the invisibility effects. To be more precise, this is going to bring the overall invisibility of your duration via the Flawless Victory up to 12 seconds. And my friends, 12 seconds is such a very long period of time for you to actually go and stay invisible and find someone else, sneak up from behind them, and pop them before they even know it, sending them to the afterlife. Adios, bye-bye. Becoming a stealthy ninja that has 12 seconds to do so is one of the most gratifying feelings in this entire game, and for that one reason, the neutral game on this particular Spectral Blade subclass is phenomenal and glorious. With this knowledge, you could also choose to have on that brand new Forsaken exotic chest piece if your RNG has been kind enough. And the reason why I say this is because that particular exotic chest piece is going to increase your super duration, and the way in which it does so is by pressing R2 or right trigger on the Xbox, and that is then going to generate more super energy by doing that heavy attack and going invisible. Unfortunately, I have no game footage of this, simply because I don't have that new exotic chest piece. But from what I've been told by many of you down in the comment section below, is that that particular exotic chest piece has the potential to give you up to 6, possibly even 7 kills while you're still in that one solo and single super. When you combine the lethality of that exotic Forsaken chest piece along with the brand new buffs that are coming in Season 5 for the Spectral Blade Super, oh my gosh, the amount of annihilation that you guys are going to incur is going to be out of this realm, and is surely going to make enemy guardians a little bit salty. Deislayers, if you thought that this Hunter's Way of the Wraith subclass couldn't have any better of a neutral game, oh my goodness gracious, do I got some spectacular news for all of you, and that's because it gets even better by one very unique perk, and it's called Corrosive Smoke. Corrosive Smoke states that this perk throws a smoke bomb from a distance with this melee ability. Keyword there is melee ability, and that the smoke bomb slows enemies and damages them over time, inflicting a nice little chunk of overall DPS. For most of my engagements when I'm using a smoke bomb, I like to anticipate that a guardian is going to come into my line of sight, and so I then try to bait them into an advantageous spot that is going to be ideal for the smoke bomb. However, another very unique way of using this is to actually damage a guardian and finish them off, because a lot of the times I find myself not so much paying attention as to how much ammo that I have in my magazine, and so in these scenarios, what you might want to do is actually toss the grenade directly at the person, and thus it's going to have that beautiful DOT effect, and then be able to down them even though you happen to run out of ammo. As you can tell, there are a wide variety of ways in which you can use this smoke bomb, and so the way in which you want to get this back quicker is by actually picking one of the 2 dodges, and that's either to use the Marksman's dodge or the Gambler's dodge. For me and my personal playstyle, I am a very aggressive player, and so that's why I like to have a Marksman's dodge, which is the twirl animation dodge capability, and that's then going to reload my magazine every single time that I happen to dodge. Despite myself using this marksman's dodge as you have seen throughout this entire video, what I would actually recommend is using the gambler's dodge, and that's because as soon as you happen to dodge via the shade step near an enemy guardian, you're then going to recharge your melee ability. And every single time that you happen to do so, you're then going to get this corrosive smoke ability directly back, and thus you're going to have another DOT grenade or smoke bomb that's going to come in handy in a wide variety of situations. Remember that the corrosive smoke is meant to be used as a trapping ability or as some kind of prediction ability, and with that logic, you're also then going to have somewhat more of a passive playstyle, which is then going to couple along superbly with flawless execution, getting those crouch critical headshots to thus proc invisibility and true sight. Knowing that, the only thing that I want to state here is actually take one step backwards, and I want you to remember exactly what the Graviton Forfeit exotic perk did. Vanishing Shadow not only increased the duration of the invisibility effects, but it'll also increase your melee recharge time. And so with that, you can see that with the Graviton Forfeit, your Gambler's Dodge, and having this melee ability called Corrosive Smoke, the symbiotic relationship between these three things is uncanny and something that you simply cannot ignore, and so I would highly recommend that you guys give that build a go, because it's certainly not going to disappoint. The only thing left that we haven't discussed yet on this Way of the Wraith build is the grenades and how you want to use them to couple along beautifully with some of the other perks that we can use. As many of you already know, we had the Spike Grenade along with a Void Wall Grenade and a Vortex Grenade, but all of them are very, very different, and the one that you've been seeing throughout this entire footage so far is the Spike Grenade. Now the reason as to why I like the Spike Grenade so much is because I can control as to exactly what wall that grenade is going to be put on, so then I can then dictate as to where my DPS is then going to occur. If you were to ask me, the Spike Grenade is by all means the best grenade out of the three, and that's because not only do I have control as to where I want the DPS to go, but it can also do the most DPS in the shortest amount of time. Now that's not to say that the Void Wall Grenade and the Vortex Grenade are bad, because they are certainly very, very good. But what I happen to find with the Vortex Grenade is that it has a very limited radial effect, and so it's only very good for actually damaging a little bit of health here and there on capture points like A, B, or C in control. Outside of that, it's not very viable, unless you guys want to become scum and a definition of a cesspool by using the Wombo Combo, aka the Corrosive Smoke and the Vortex Grenade together, because if that's the case, then you're going to make Guardians quite upset, but hey, to each their own, and I'm not going to dictate as to what you can or can't do. As far as the Void Wall Grenade goes, that thing is actually quite similar to the Vortex Grenade, but the key difference here is that it goes into a long line of fire, and although it can do a lot of DPS, you have to be standing inside that fire in order for it to do so. Furthermore, I found that the Void Wall Grenade was very, very inconsistent as to the direction in which that line of fire was going. Sometimes it would be horizontal from my location, and other times it would be perpendicular, and other times it would even be at 45 degrees. In the end, I personally believe that the Vortex Grenade is certainly the way to go, but everyone has their own preference and playstyle, so by all means, pick which one is best for you and it's going to fit your unique playstyle the best. After hearing all the stuff that I've just said, I think that you guys now have a very fair understanding as to how to use the super effectively, showing that it can decimate, eradicate, and obliterate Guardians, but more importantly, the neutral game on this subclass is phenomenal if, and this is a capital if, you have a very, very passive playstyle. If you happen to have an aggressive playstyle like I do, then this Way of the Wraith subclass is not going to be for you, simply because it plays way, way too slow. However, if you like to be a sneaky ninja, then by all means, this thing right here is going to fit your playstyle beautifully and phenomenally, and when you take into account all the changes that Bungie is making come Season 5 for the Spectral Blade Super, this thing is really going to become not only reliable, but it's also going to have a very, very high chance of getting multi-kills, and that is always a plus in my book. As the super currently stands, it's still muff cabbage trash, but nevertheless, let me know if you agree with my assessment or you don't, if you thought the guy was helpful or wasn't, and no matter what the case may be, you guys can guarantee that I'm certainly going to read all those comments, and it's going to be quite exciting to see what you guys say. Lastly, go ahead and check out some of my other new videos, as you guys can see right there on the screen. If you happen to enjoy this one, then you're definitely going to enjoy those as well. that's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now. And so as always, Deislayers, great gaming. Until next time.